Now we're going to add some visual indication when our brick is destroyed. Beyond just the brick disappearing, let's add some particles of little bricks flying away. And to do that, we're going to need to create a new particle system. We'll go to Game Object and choose Effects and Particle System. I'm going to name this Brick Break Particles. And then we need to first create a material so that we can assign our texture here and get this showing up. If you look down at our particle system, underneath the renderer section, you'll see that the default material is here. It's this sprite lit default, and that's not really helpful. We need an actual material that shows some sort of a block. And if we look at the particles folder here, you see that we actually have a broken little brick brown object or texture that we can use. So I'm going to create a new material that uses that brick brown. We'll right click and choose create, and we're going to choose material. Now we need to give this a name. I'll call it brick particle. And then we need to choose the materials shader type. So there are a couple options here for particles. First thing we need to make sure that we do is go to the universal render pipeline, because that's what we're set up to use, and then go into the particles section. Here we can choose lit, simple lit, or unlit. I would often choose lit, but what we need to do actually doesn't work right with the lit particles, because I want my bricks to eventually fade away, and right now that only works with the unlit shader. So I'm going to choose the unlit shader, which will work totally fine for what I want to do, and change the surface type from opaque to transparent, because I want to be able to fade away the alpha and make these things just kind of smoothly disappear. Next, we'll assign the texture. So I'll take this brick brown and drag it right into that base map. And then it hasn't updated here yet because we haven't assigned that material to our brick particles. So I'll go select the brick particles. We'll expand out that mesh renderer again. Just click again on the big bar here, not the checkbox. You don't want to turn it off. And then drag the material over to the material section. Now you see a bunch of bricks going flying up in the air. There are a couple things that I'd like to change though. First, I'd like these to fly off in just kind of a burst instead of all at once, or instead of consistently. So I want them kind of like blast off all at once, not in a consistent stream of them. So we'll go to the emission section and change rate over time to 0 and hit plus to add a burst. Here we can control the number of things in the burst by adjusting that count. But before we do that, let's change the shape that they're bursting out at. Instead of them going up and out, let's make them go all directions. We'll expand out shape and change the shape from cone over to sphere. In fact, let's go to the scene view real quick before we do it. So you can see the cone right here that it's using. If we change this over to a sphere, you'll see that now they go off in all directions. Now, I also want to shrink these things down. I don't like the size of them at all. They're way too big. So I'm going to go find the start size up here at the top and change this to about a 0.5. I'm going to change the start lifetime to about 0.75 so that they go pretty quick and they can disappear over time. Then we're going to go do that disappearing over time part. So that's underneath color over lifetime. If I expand out color over lifetime, I get a pop-up here. And, well, first I've got to turn it on. I'll get a pop-up when I click on this. And if I go to the top right bar here, I can adjust the alpha at the end of the life cycle. So I drag this all the way down to 0. And then my brick particles should start pretty good and then disappear halfway along. Now, I don't want them to disappear right away. So I'm going to add another point right up here where the alpha is all the way at 255, so they don't start blending away until about halfway through their life cycle. To do that, I just clicked up at the top, and I think I'll drag this over even more to probably around like 80%. In fact, I might even just type in an 80 there. So the last 20%, they'll just fade away. So there's my bricks. They're looking okay. Let's change that. I'm going to put that to 60. I want to change this a little bit more, though. I want to make these things rotate and kind of spin randomly and maybe even shrink over time, too. So to do that, we can find the rotation over lifetime, expand that out. And if I leave it at just a default of 45, you see that they'll all spin the same. I want them to be somewhat randomized, though. So I'm going to choose the random between two constants from the drop down there and put a negative 180 and a positive 180. So that way they'll all spin totally randomly and it'll be a little bit varied, I guess. So let's watch it in here. See, they all kind of spin. Looks good. The last thing I want to add in here is a size over a lifetime. So I'll expand that out, check the box, and do exactly the same. I'm going to hit the drop down, choose random between two constants, and put let's go with a 0.1 or 0.5 and a 0.1. So we can go anywhere from our initial size to all the way down to 0.1, depending on what we randomly pick for that particle. So now I've got some particles that I think look okay. They look pretty good for when I destroy a brick. The next thing I need to do is assign them to my brick. So we'll go to the brick. We'll go open up that brick script, and we're going to add a serialized field at the top for a particle system. So I'll add a serialized field, call this particle system, and I'll call this brick particles. Now, when we hit our brick, we want to spawn some brick particles so that our player can see them as well as destroying our object. So I'm going to copy the brick particles, and right here on line 19, we'll add some braces because we only want to do this if we're actually going to destroy the object. We don't want to call this code if we're landing on top or something else. So if that dot product is good and we should be destroying our game object, before we do that, we will instantiate a particle system. So I'll paste in my particles at our transform position, and we'll use the quaternion dot identity for the rotation. Again, that's just the default rotation value. It's like passing in nothing, or just face the normal default direction. So we're just going to give it that, save, jump into Unity, and let's go see if we get a particle system that appears and shows up when we break a brick. So hit play. Oh, I've got to assign the brick particles. Here's what I'll do. While we're playing, I'm going to drag this brick particle in here and assign it. Just run over here, jump and hit it and see if it actually works. Okay, so that worked. We got the brick there, but we still need to make this into a prefab and probably make it so that it doesn't keep looping. I don't know if you saw that appearing there. So next steps are just go into our prefab folder, take our particles and drag them in. Then go find our brick and assign the brick particles to them. Then we should probably apply the overrides to our brick script. And then finally, let's go adjust that brick particle one more time. So I'm going to delete the placed one here. Go double check that our brick doesn't have the reference to the placed one. It's actually referencing the prefab. Then we'll go open up that prefab, and I want to uncheck the looping option because I don't want this thing to loop. I want it to kind of destroy itself or clean itself up. I'm also going to change the duration from a 5 to a 1 because the lifetime is 0.75, so this thing should end at about a 1, and then I can probably figure out a way to clean that up. So let's go back, save, press play, go one more time, break a brick, make sure that it works and that I only get one particle, and then we'll do a commit. So I'll run over here. Let's go land on top of it first. Seems good. Hit it from the side. Seems good. Hit it from below. The brick breaks and disappears. It's looking good. Let's go into the plastic setup and commit our changes. First, I'm going to save my sandbox scene though. Make sure that it shows up in here. So we added brick break particles. And we'll check that in.